Welcome back to The Princess Left Behind. I'm Sita Brand, bringing you the final chapter of Princess Yashodhara's remarkable journey. When we last saw her, she had cut her hair and joined the order of nuns. She had revealed the secret she'd carried for 7 years, that she was awake the night the Buddha left, and she had consciously let him go. The weight of that confession lifted, both teacher and student could finally move forward, unburdened by the past. The weeks that followed brought Yashodhara a peace she had never known. She, who had once been adorned with the finest silks and jewels, now wore simple saffron robes. The woman who had commanded servants now carried her own begging bowl. The mother who had raised a prince now walked the path of Dharma alongside her former husband. Yashodhara took to monastic life with natural grace. Her progress in meditation was remarkable. She achieved states of concentration that took others years to master. The Buddha himself noted this during one of their Dharma discussions beneath a banyan tree. "Your progress is extraordinary, Yashodhara. You achieved meditative states that took me years to master." "Perhaps," she said with a gentle smile, "because my meditation began 7 years ago, the night you left. I've been practicing longer than you know." The years passed. Yashodhara became renowned as a teacher in her own right. Women across the kingdom came to hear her speak, drawn by her unique perspective. Enlightenment found not by fleeing the world, but by facing it with full awareness. Her relationship with Rahula deepened in unexpected ways. No longer bound by the possessive love of a mother for her child, she became his spiritual guide and friend. He would often seek her counsel after teachings, and she would help him understand the Buddha's words through the lens of lived experience. "Mother, the Buddha teaches that all attachment brings suffering. But you loved me. Does that mean your love was a form of suffering?" "I learned to love without possessing, Rahula. To care for you without clinging to you. That's the difference between attachment and true love. Attachment says, 'You are mine,' and love says, 'You are.'" Rahula nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. He had watched his mother transform from grieving wife to determined ascetic to enlightened teacher. Her journey had been as profound as his father's, though walked on a different path. One evening, as the monsoon rains fell gently on the monastery roof, Yashodhara sat in meditation. Her practice had deepened over the years until she could maintain perfect concentration for hours. But tonight, something different was happening. As she sat, a profound understanding arose. Not new knowledge, but a different seeing of the nature of reality itself. The boundary between self and the other dissolved. Past and future collapsed into the eternal present. The woman who had been princess, wife, mother, and nun saw clearly that these were all merely roles, like costumes worn and discarded. She saw the night Siddhartha left not as abandonment, but as liberation for both of them. She saw her years of ascetic practice not as suffering, but as refining fire. She saw Rahula not as her son to possess, but as a being on his own journey. And she saw the Buddha not as the husband who left her, but as a fellow traveller who had reached the same mountain peak by a different route. What remained when all the roles fell away? Pure awareness. Compassion without object, peace beyond understanding. When Yashodhara opened her eyes, dawn light was streaming through the window. Something fundamental had shifted. The seeking had ended. The questions that had driven her for years had not been answered. They had dissolved, revealed as based on false premises. She rose and walked to where the Buddha was giving his morning teaching, and as she approached, he looked up and their eyes met. No words were needed. He saw in her gaze what he had seen in the mirror after his own enlightenment, the end of becoming, the cessation of striving, perfect liberation. He bowed in respect. Welcome, sister in the Dharma. From that day forward, Yashodhara taught with new authority. Her students recognized something had changed, though few could name exactly what. She spoke not from belief or philosophy, but from direct knowledge, the certainty that comes only from seeing reality as it truly is. In the final years of her life, Yashodhara became known throughout the world as one of the most foremost teachers of the Buddha's path. Kings and paupers alike sought her wisdom. But she remained humble, always pointing students back to their own experience rather than asking them to believe her words. When visitors asked about her relationship with the Buddha, she would smile and say, "The past was like a dream, vivid while experienced, but insubstantial upon awakening." What mattered was not who she had been to him, but who each person could become through sincere practice. Do not make the mistake of thinking enlightenment requires leaving everything behind, she would say. Sometimes the greatest renunciation is to remain exactly where you are, but with the transformed understanding. One afternoon, as golden autumn leaves fell around the monastery, Yashodhara and the Buddha sat together in companionable silence. They were no longer husband and wife, no longer even teacher and student. They were simply two human beings who had walked different paths to the same understanding. Do you ever wonder how our lives might have unfolded if you had stayed? She said to the Buddha. That question assumes a past that could have been different, but there is only what was, what is, and what will be. We are exactly where we were always going to arrive. Yashodhara smiled, spoken like a true Buddha. But I'm allowed to wonder, even if the wondering leads nowhere. They sat in silence for a while longer, two old friends of peace with the choices they had made, the paths they had walked, the truths they had discovered. And so we come to the end of Yashodhara's life, though in truth there is no ending, only transformation. The princess left behind became the teacher who stayed. The abandoned wife became the enlightened nun. The woman defined by others' choices became the one who defined her own path. Two awakenings, separate yet connected, two paths different yet parallel. In the end, it was not the husband who liberated the wife, but two enlightened beings recognizing the light in each other. The Buddha found his answer beneath the Bodhi tree. Yashodhara had found hers in the courage to let him go, and in doing so, discovered that true freedom comes not from what we renounce, but from how we meet what remains. This concludes The Princess Left Behind, Yashodhara's tale. Thank you for joining me on this journey through a story too often untold, the story of a woman who was left behind and who found in that abandonment the seeds of her own awakening. I'm Sita Brand, your storyteller. May you find wisdom in unexpected places, and may you discover that sometimes the greatest spiritual journey is not the one that takes you far from home, but one That shows you the truth of where you've always been.